Engaging citizens, a game changer for development? Methods and tools for accountability in service delivery with Yamini Iyer, Director, Accountability Initiative.
If one were to actually think about the specific mechanisms by which citizens engage the state, one way of pulling this together is to build a typology of the processes by which services are delivered and the specific mechanisms through which citizens can engage at specific points of this process. We've developed a typology, and perhaps the first place to start thinking about citizen engagement is to think about it through this typology. If you think about it loosely, service delivery begins at a stage of legislation and policy formation. Processes then get designed, legislation gets designed, it then gets implemented, and then we monitor the process and we evaluate the outcomes. Citizens have engaged with service delivery across all elements of this process and devised different tools, mechanisms, methodologies to be able to do this engagement. So if you look from the start of the process, if we think about legislation, policy formulation, tools such as public interest litigation, pre-legislative scrutiny are some examples. If we think about the process of implementation, tools such as participatory budgeting, where one actually engages with how resources are going to be specifically allocated, tools such as social auditing, where one actually looks at the process by which things are being implemented, are some interesting examples. If we think about the actual evaluation, what happens from the process by which services are delivered, we have some very, very interesting examples of tools that have been developed to monitor outcomes, ways of getting citizens to actually see whether the service has been delivered and met the goals, policy goals that it's set out to do. With that, I'm going to walk you through a few examples of different tools that have been used in the specific context of India to give you a sense of the granularity of how tools actually get used, what conditions under which they get used, when they work, and what are the outcomes of greater citizen engagement in placing accountability claims on the state. One of the most widely known tools accountability tools in India is the Right to Information Law. The Right to Information Law itself evolved through a people's movement. It came through demand, citizen demand for accessing the state, for understanding and scrutinizing the state. And in 2005, the Government of India passed the Right to Information Law as a national law, which essentially enables citizens of India to ask this government any questions and seek information related to governmental processes. Since its passage, citizens have mobilized together and used this law in myriad different ways. One interesting example is the work of an NGO called the Satark Nagrik Sangathan in Delhi. This NGO has been using the Right to Information Law to ask for information of the Delhi's Legislative Assembly, Delhi's elected representatives, to find out what they are doing with money specifically allocated to them for constituency development. In India, this money is called the MLA LAD money. With this information, the Satark Nagrik Sangathan went out and ran voter information campaigns in the run-up to one of Delhi's elections. An evaluation was done by MIT's JPAL, which looked at the impact of information around how elected representatives actually use their money, to find that in places where incumbents had used their money and had participated in different service delivery roles that MLAs are expected to participate in, their voter share increased significantly and increased positively. So as this example shows, citizens have used the Right to Information Act to understand how their elected representatives behave and draw important conclusions from that about who they do and do not want to vote for. Another interesting example of citizen engagement that has been quite famous in India is social audits. The idea of social audits, in fact, evolved from the Right to Information movement, where what the social audit tries to do is to create spaces for citizens to quite literally use the information that they are accessing from the state to place direct questions and direct demands for accountability on the state. In 2006, the Government of India passed the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. This is an act that guarantees 100 days of employment, minimum of 100 days of employment, to every rural citizen in India. Embedded in this act was a mandate that all gram panchayats, all local governments in India, rural local governments, would do a mandatory social audit at least once in 6 months. In Andhra Pradesh, a state in the southern part of India, the government took this mandate very, very seriously and developed a very comprehensive process of facilitating and conducting social audits for the National Rural Employment Guarantee Program on every single work site that is public work site that has been created through the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. So since 2006, nearly 6 rounds of social audits have been conducted. The process of social audits involves citizens accessing information about the various aspects of the implementation of the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. So this includes information on muster rolls, attendance registers, quantum of payment, details of material costs, processes employed to actually start a work site and run the work site. This information is then cross-verified by people who participated on the work site. So if I have worked on the work site, the social auditor will come and ask me how many days I worked on the work site, how much payment I got, when I received my payment, and cross-verify what I say with the data that is recorded in government documents. Based on this, a public hearing is held. And in this public hearing, all government officials are mandatorily expected to show up for these meetings and respond to findings from the social audit. The findings vary are of a large variety, from delays in payments to actual serious corruption, stealing of wages, inflating of material costs, so on and so forth. And a lot of positive things come out too. Citizens express their happiness when things get implemented well and talk about some of the positive implications of programs like this. Once the public hearing is completed, it is then incumbent on the government to start a grievance redressal process. This grievance redressal process involves actually taking action on issues that have been identified by the social audit process. We have been evaluating the social audit process now very much since it began, and some very, very interesting things have emerged on the impact of this. For one, it has had a significant impact on raising awareness. In a survey that my colleagues and I did in 2008, between 2007 and 2008, we discovered that the social audit can increase citizens' awareness about the details of the program by over 80% across different aspects of these details. It also has a significant impact on the way citizens engage with the state. Usually, especially the poor, engage with the state in a framework of patronage, where you're asking the state to give you things and the state will dispense them based on its own whims and fancies. But in the specific context of the social audit, citizens are asking questions of the state on aspects of what it was supposed to guarantee. And it is obligatory on the state's part to respond to these. So in some senses, it is a space for direct answerability that completely shifts the dynamic, where the state, rather than dispensing patronage, has to actually respond to questions and give explanations for its behavior. So for that very tiny period of time when citizens are social auditors, they actually find themselves in an extremely powerful position and very, very different to the way in which they engage with the state on the day-to-day. However, when it comes to grievance redressal, the process of social auditing in Andhra Pradesh has been somewhat slow. In 2012, my colleagues and I did a survey where we traced the effects of the social audit amongst those who had actually placed complaints and had grievances, and we wanted to try and understand how the redressal system worked. We found that of the 125 wage seekers that had complained during social audit, as many as 112 said that they had no idea what happened to their complaint. So redressal, essential as it is, and we'll talk about that in a minute, has been quite slow despite the fact that the state has pushed the process of social auditing. And perhaps a consequence of this slow redressal is that we haven't seen as dramatic a change in state behavior as we would have anticipated. A study by 2 economists that actually looked at the nature of complaints coming out of social audits found that material complaints in fact have increased over the years by almost 173% in social audits. So while the social audits have placed issues in the public domain, it hasn't necessarily been successful in redressing certain types of corruption. Another example is an example of monitoring outcomes. There's a large NGO in India called Pratham, which in 2005 launched a survey called Asar. Asar in Hindi quite literally means impact. This survey was an effort to try and understand how government money in the area of elementary education is actually impacting the quality of education that students going to schools receive. And the results were stunning. India had seen a significant increase in its elementary education budget, a massive push towards universal enrollment, a massive push towards increasing schooling infrastructure, and most of us had assumed, given that we've built schools everywhere, children must be learning. This survey turned this on its head. Year after year after year since 2004, citizens of India have been going out to test whether their schools actually do the job that they had set out to do. And we found year after year after year that on average, nearly 50% of children in Standard 5 can barely read a Standard 2 textbook. This is really powerful stuff. And by doing this survey repeatedly, the Asar survey has actually managed to completely change public discourse on how we think about elementary education. In 2012, the government's 5-year plan, the 12th 5-year plan, which lays out the policy framework for India, in fact, for the first time, explicitly recognized the importance of making learning outcomes as an explicit goal of education policy. A consequence in no small measure because of the annual Asar surveys. Thank you.